Hi, welcome to Clashin. Are you interested in learning how to create a beautiful felt bangle seamlessly working around a resist or template? Are you new to wet felting and you have only worked on flat felt projects before and are wondering how to get started with more sculptural felt? My name is Nicola Brown. I'm a textile artist moving towards a sustainable practice in rural southeast Ireland. During this comprehensive step-by-step video, I guide you through all the steps necessary to create your own beautiful three-dimensional bangles. These will be totally seamless, and I work during the video with two different colors of merino and some embellishing silk, some black silk. But you can choose to make your pieces either plain, as I have with this one here, or two-tone or multicolored. The options are limitless. Really what I want to do is share with you a comprehensive guide to felting your own bangles. Let's go. The equipment that I need for this felting project around a resist, this bracelet tutorial, is very simple. I need a bowl for my water. I'm using a bowl browser or a sprinkler that you can use for watering bonsai. This is great for getting a fine spray, but if you don't have one of these, just use a plastic bottle that you punch holes in the top. I like to use olive oil soap or a natural soap without any artificial colours. I don't mind organic scent, but I also don't use anything with artificial scent. So this is an olive oil soap, a Marseille soap, but you can use Dr. Bonner's or any handmade soap. I have a little tea towel. This is a great one. This was a gift to me, and I can actually put this around the waistband of my trousers so that and I also will have a small hand towel that I'll use for rolling up the felt. Bubble wrap. This is just a piece of packaging that I'm recycling. It's actually got smaller bubbles than I usually work with, but waste not, want not. I didn't want to cut a new piece from my large roll because I have this very handy. So I prefer bubble wrap because it's very, very soft and flexible. You can use solar pool cover, but for me, it's too stiff and thick, particularly for these smaller projects. This here is laminate floor underlay, but any sort of a squishy foam packaging is very useful to save for your templates when you are working with a resist. This is what I will be wrapping the wool fibre around, and the resist prevents the wool from one side felting through to the wool on the other, and ultimately we'll take this out, and that will mean we can make a three-dimensional shape with no seam, and this is what I use for these projects. So I've cut it out. It's wider than my hand, and I'm going to write the dimensions for you. You need to make sure the bracelets, your hand will be going into the bracelet like this, so you need to make sure that the template is large enough that your hand will be able to go through the completed bracelet, but not too wide in this direction, otherwise the bracelet will just fall off your hands. And then I also have a piece of fly screen, but mosquito netting is wonderful, or my favorite nets are old net sort of curtains that you can pick up in thrift stores, etc., etc. This net is going to be used for applying my soap on top of my wool fibre. I don't like mixing my soap with the water. I prefer applying the soap separately through a net, and that way I can actually be more mindful about how much soap I'm using. However, if you're familiar with felt making and you usually add your soap to your water, please feel free to go ahead. I need very few materials for making a felt bangle or bracelet. In fact, I could just use merino by itself, but for my bracelet, I'm choosing to use two different colors of merino. This preparation is a merino bat. It's also a very short fibre merino. It's a wool that I particularly love using, but you can use roving or any wool that you're used to using, and in fact many of my bracelets are made from roving. And I also have just a small amount here of a black silk roving, and this is going to be the embellishment for my red and orange bangles bracelets. If you're finding this video helpful and useful so far, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for future updates, tips and advice from my textile studio. I'm now going to lay out my bracelet. I'm not going to stress about this too much, but I would never lay down a big piece of a wool bat. I would always peel the bat into different layers, which I'll do at the beginning. And this is just a nice thickness for me. It's neither too thick nor too thin. So I can do more than one bracelet at a time. So I think I'll just do 2 here. So I just lay my first piece of wool bat down, and I'm just overlapping the bats in shingles the same as I would if I was using roving. And I'm going to mix up the orange and the red as I go along. And I want a little bit of wool coming over the edge of the template or the resist. So that there is the first layer on side 1 of one of the bracelets. Now I'm going to lay out the same over here. So I've just been overlapping the different shingles. I'm putting my hands down now, and actually it's very slightly light there, so I'll top that up there. And now I'm ready to wet this side here, to fold the wool fibre over to the other side, and then to continue finishing, creating the first full layer of fibre. In order to use this ball browser, I need to squeeze the air out of it first and then put it into my bowl of clean water. Once the water has come up into the bulb, it's like a pipette action, I just sprinkle a little on the wool. I try not to sprinkle it on the outside edge because the water, when I press it down, is going to move out a little bit further anyway. Working from the center out, I just use my olive oil soap, press it down through the net. I'm not trying to start felting this. I just want to work the soap and water through the wool slightly before I turn the package. So I'm ready to turn this now, but just before I do that, I'm going to run my fingernails along the edge of the bracelet just to sweep those edges in slightly. I put a second piece of bubble wrap down, give it a little rub, and I do rub where the edge is, the edge of my template, all along here, and then very carefully I hold everything together and I turn it over. Now each time I turn over, I would press down very firmly, and then I peel back the top layer of bubble wrap. So what I want to do now is I want to pull in the fibre from the first side of layer 1, and I make sure that this comes up very firmly against the edge of the template. I don't mind that that's a bit bulky there, that's okay. And I just dry my hands before I continue to lay out this first side. So I need to make sure to trap all the wool that has come over the edge of the template. So I just continue to lay my bracelet like so. I fill in. And that's that first one laid out, and I'll do the same with the second one. Now, as you can see, I'm actually blending my red and my orange wool as I go along. I like this because it's going to give me an interesting blended look in the finished bracelet, but you can just use one colour if you so choose. I soap it. I'm not going back and forwards with the soap, just over it once, and then I press my hands down and make sure that there's enough water and everything is nice and wet without being swimming. If I feel any weak areas under my hands, I can feel a slightly weak area there. I'm just going to have a look at that, and I'll just top that section there up. Okay, sweep the edges in. Plastic back on. Turn this over. Press down. And now, as I peel the bubble wrap back, I'm allowing the fibre from the other side just to come up and complete this. So I've now completed side 1 and side 2 of layer 1, and I need to repeat that process for the second layer. Lay out side 1 and side 2 to complete your second layer. Repeat exactly what you did for the first layer, and then you will end up with 2 layers of wool on both sides of your template. So I like to pull the fibre in every single time when I'm working with the resist when I roll over or turn over the package, and I do that with soapy hands. Don't worry about that. I could just put the bubble wrap back, give it a little rub. There we go. So now, the embellishing fibres. So I need to dry my hands first. Try not to use wet hands when you're dealing with embellishing fibres or any dry fibre. So just pull some of the silk fibre off the roving and just put it down on your bracelet. I'm just keeping this very simple. Water on top of the embellishments, but not everywhere else. I just put the bubble wrap down again, press that, turn everything over. Just pull those edges in. I've had a break and I'm ready to start the felting process. I'm just going to lift the bubble wrap off, put down my net and do the lightest of soaps on top of the silk. Just give it one small little rub, and I'll just check the other side as well. Sometimes when you leave your felt for a short while, it might have slipped a little bit from a template, so I just give it that rub, pull it in, press down and turn over. So the reason I'm being so careful to make sure everything is pulled up tightly on the resist is if the fibre from the other side and this side comes out over the edge, it will get much thicker at the edge of the piece, and we don't want that. We don't want a big ridge on our bracelet. We would like to have a nice seamless result. At least I would anyway. So just making sure I have enough soap and water on these so that they're not sloppy, but that there is some squishiness. I'm ready now to start felting. So with the felting process, if you're gentle at the beginning, your felt actually comes together much quicker. I like to add a small bit of water on top where my hands are going to be, tiny bit of soap, and then I'm going to go back and forwards for a count of 20. Gently, with all the pressure going downwards. So that's 20 in that direction. Back and forwards is 1. And at the beginning, I never do too much without checking. Sweeping my edges in. And I actually think that this bracelet here is slightly on the dry side. So I can't see any water or soap when I put my fingertip down. I'd like to see a small little bit of water and soap. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. These are the things that as you get more experience, you will start to identify. But if you already have plenty of experience, just work ahead. Now, can you see there's just a slight slickness of soap there? And I can feel a little bit of soap under my fingertips. It's important now not to touch the silk very much. We want to try and get that to felt in and not lift up. So put the bubble wrap back on and turn the whole package over. Each time I turn it over, I press it down, and that's actually to make sure that whatever I'm working on is now making good contact with the underneath bubble wrap. If I don't press it down, there may not be such good contact. And I love how this silk already looks on this side. I can see that it needs to be pulled up at the edges, and I can also see there needs to be a bit more soap on this side as well. And the reason I'm saying it needs to be pulled up is this is sort of coming out a little bit from the edge of the template. So I just use my fingers to pull everything in. I don't worry about these ridges because they will felt down, but I do worry if it's bobbly at the edge of the template or the edge of the resist, whatever you want to call that. So now I'm just going to add a small bit more soap and water on this side. At this stage, there's already soap in the piece, so I can sometimes just add the soap on my hands and then just put it through the net. Here looks perfect, there looks like it needs some more. So I'll just go back and add some there. Perfect. Sweep the edges in again. Pull everything tightly up against the template. And off I go.
20 on this side.
So after I've done 20 on both sides in that direction and checked that everything is coming up tightly, swept my edges in, I then rotate my piece of felt around, in this case 2 bracelets, and I now do 20 in the opposite direction. And basically, I just keep rotating my bracelets, keep making sure that the edges are tight until it gets to a stage where I'm happy that everything is starting to come together nicely, and then I will actually start rolling it. And when I start to roll these, I like to roll them in this direction first. I also have a dry tea towel, but you can use a hand towel. And this is going to help me hold the package together. Once I roll this up, I'm not squeezing it too tightly, but water is coming out. I then put it into my tea towel or hand towel and roll it up further. Then as I roll back and forwards, I'm not putting pressure downwards. I'm just rocking it and letting my fingertips go up and come back, and I'm going to do this about 20 times. If I put too much pressure on, what happens is this package will flatten, and that's not good for the felt underneath. I'll have to go back and open it and re-roll. So let's just go. And that's sufficient. I'll just open it. The reason I'm very cautious at the beginning with any piece is if you progress too quickly, what will happen is your pieces will felt, but the quality of the felt won't be as good. So I'll just flatten it. It's quite curved. And I can see that the wool fibre is slipping off the edge. Can you see where the line of the edge would be? And the fibre is slipping off. So it's vital at this stage that I really pull this fibre in. We can work out any ridge in the middle, but it's not so easy to work out where the fibre slips at the edge. So I'm pulling it in, and I know the wool is coming together as felt because I can actually pull that quite firmly. The edges aren't perfectly straight, but we will work on them more in a minute in the final shaping. Just pull those in a bit there. And now I'm going to roll on this side. It's important to keep rotating and rolling from different sides because the piece of the package that's in the very center of the roll is getting more pressure than that on the outside. So you need to keep rotating so that each side is getting equal pressure. Think of a jam Swiss roll and the jam in the middle, that section. Think of that upper surface of your felt as the jam in the middle of a roll, and you need to keep rotating so that you do it evenly on both sides. And I do push it down, but I'm just going to lift that top bit up so you can see it's starting to curl, which shows that it's starting to shrink. Push it down, give it a rub, pull the edges in. Turn it over, pull the edges in on this side. Now I'm going to rotate it. And now I'm going to roll it in this direction. So I hope you can see that the tea towel holds everything together nicely. I like to start with my hands in the middle of a piece when I'm rolling, and then just move them out to the edge of the piece and back into the middle, trying to give everywhere an equal amount of time with my hands on top of it. Now, let's see how this is looking. Whoa, can you see the curvature now that's happened? This shows that this is shrinking in that direction, which is good. I want everything to come together, but equally, I want to do a little more rolling before I remove the resist inside. So off I go again. As the wool felts, I actually start to put a bit more pressure downwards. And this is just a sensitivity, a touch thing. I can feel it getting firmer under my hands. But as a beginner, you want to be careful not to push down too soon. If you see the piece curling though, you know it's starting to come together. And pretty quickly you'll get used to what it feels like. When I think that the felt is coming together quite nicely and I'm happy that it's starting to shrink, I like to get my hands soapy, and then what I'll do is I'll rotate each bracelet slightly on the template or the resist material so that the seam is in a different position. And this is another nice way of just making sure that you don't get a big ridge at the outside of your piece. So I'm taking my time. I could even take it off. Just put it like that, back on again. So now this here is where that seam was. There is that outside. And I can start to stretch these pieces into a nice shape. There's a bit of a curve here. I can decide later on if I want to maybe cut that piece off, but I'll just do a small bit of rubbing with my hands directly on the felt, making sure that they're nice and squishy. Pulling in the edges and just rubbing where those seams were. Same on the other side. So just stretching if I want to. And if I see a piece that's sticking out a bit more than I want, I can actually use my hands to rub that in there. If you feel your hands grating on the wool, that's a sign that you haven't got enough soap. So you'd like it to be a little bit soapy and squishy without being too wet. So as you can see, I'm rubbing quite firmly here on top of my felt. The silk is all starting, or has integrated very nicely. I'll just do a small bit more rubbing within the bubble wrap now, or rolling, and then it's ready to take them off and to finish them without the resist material inside. Because I know that the fibres are all coming together very well, at this stage I'm quite happy to put pressure on my hands. And I will be expecting to see great shrinkage, which means that the wool is shrinking and it's now not flat against the template. Just even the edges a little bit. As a beginner, it's better to do one bracelet at a time, not try and felt two together, but I leave that up to you. One more time in this direction. So rolling up within the bubble wrap, rolling up within your damp tea towel. And the reason I say damp is a lot of the soap and water from the felt has been coming out and the towel is now damp, but it started off dry. Again, you can see how much the felt is shrinking, and the best quality felt is made by shrinking and stretching. So don't be afraid to pull your felt. And now I'm going to just do 20 or 30 rolls in this direction on both sides, and then take these off the resist material. These cuffs are now ready to come off the template that's in the middle, or the resist. And I'll be able to work them both by hand. So let me take them off. So at this stage, what I actually like to do is I like to turn my felt inside out so that I'm not rubbing the silk directly on the bubble wrap. I am protecting the silk on the inside, and I'm just doing some work on this side of the felt because that side has not had as much pressure because it's been on the inside of the piece. Now you can choose to just work your edges and work them in so that they're as straight as possible. You can choose to felt your pieces fully and then cut the edge, or you could choose to cut the edge now with the scissors and finish it. So I'm going to just cut the edge on one piece there. When I started felting, I would have thought this was a big no-no, but I'm just going to demonstrate for you. So don't be afraid to break the rules or unwritten rules. I'm not even looking at the other side to see what the silk is like, and those scraps, I'll just throw those particular ones out because they're so small. But if you have bigger scraps than this, you can use them to make wonderful felt beads, and I do have a tutorial for that online. So let's just look at this one here, which I have cut the edges. The edges need to be sealed. And a simple way of doing this is either use your hands and rub them between both hands, or rub them against the bubble wrap. So I'm just working around. I'm not rubbing in this direction, I'm rubbing in this direction first, just to seal those cut edges. Or I'll work them against the bubble wrap. Personally, I love actually holding them in my hands. What I'm doing is just putting pressure on the edge, fingertips down. With the short fibre merino I used, this actually gives a nice edge. If you cut roving, you may discover that it's a little bit more wavy. But everything just adds to the organic nature of the piece. I'll turn my hand around, do the other edge. So now I've sealed those cut edges, and this is ready for fulling, which is shrinking to get it to the size I want. At the moment it's very big and it's also quite wide, but I'll be just felting that. First though, I'm going to just do some work on the edges of this piece that I haven't cut. So I might just look at the edge. Here's a place that definitely needs to be worked in. I like to rub these against the edge of the bubble wrap as well, often putting my hand in. And then I'll just keep rotating. Here there's a bit sticking out a bit more, so I put more pressure down on the tip of my finger. So just taking my time, working around and firming up these edges. So here, this red bit, I'll make sure I put my finger there. I'm putting more pressure down in that area. And I'll also pull the felt out on either side of that red bit and hopefully work that in a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit better. And then I'll do the same on this other side. So really what I'm doing is just firming up this outer edge and trying to get it a little bit more even. Just take your time with this finishing. Don't rush the process. Enjoy feeling the fibre under your hand. Now, I could decide at this stage that this particular cuff is very large and I want to cut it in half, but I'm just going to keep going because sometimes oversized jewellery is really nice. And as you can see, as I rotate, it's not obvious where there was any seam that went over the edge of the template. But I would like both of these to shrink more in this direction now. So I can either roll them up in the bubble wrap again, or a tip for finishing your felt is to actually roll them in your wet tea towel. Linen is fantastic, or cotton. This particular one is cotton, although linen would be my favorite. And this really helps give your felt a beautiful finish. So just make a little sausage of your tea towel. You can see all the soapy water, that's no problem. So I did 40, went up and down 40 times there, and I will open. stretch the felt. I'll just move it so that the bit that was on the outside is now in a different position. Same with this one. I'll turn it up the other way up. So the whole time I'm just neatening the edges if I think they need a bit of stretching. And I'll roll again. And then I'll roll in the other direction. Plenty of pressure at this stage. Now, I'd like to roll the cuffs in this direction. Because at the moment it's still quite wide on my hand. Quite loose, shall we say. So this direction. Towards the end of the felting process, I just put the bracelets into hot water. Now I usually do this in my sink, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm doing it here on my table in a bowl of water. So this is starting to remove the soap from the felt. It's making the piece get hotter, and then I like to roll each piece on itself and then in the towel, as this also really helps it shrink at the end. So rolling the felt on itself without as much soap in it helps it shrink. Can you see how much that is shrinking there? So I need to stretch this now. Stretching and shrinking is what makes the best quality felt. Do it again into the water. Rolling it up on itself, then in the towel. And that has really shrunk significantly in that direction this time. So I'm going to try this particular bracelet on and see if I can still get my hand in it. I can. There are no obvious seams from where the outside edge of the resist was. I would still like it to shrink a little more in that direction, just so it's not such a wide cuff. So I'll roll it in that way, and then I'm going to turn it the right way out and give it a final rinse and shape. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look and see what this cuff looks like. I can put it on my hand. Now I would like this to be a little bit firmer, but what I'm now going to do is I'm going to give this a rinse in really hot water, and then I'll do a small bit of rolling in this direction to make it narrower for my hand, and then I will make sure that after I've rinsed it in the water and I do the final shaping and stretching, that I do not have any soap or any soapy towel near this piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a little bit more work on the other cuff, and then I'm going to clear the table, get a fresh towel, wash the two pieces and finish them together. This one here is the piece that I left with the organic edges, and this bracelet is the one that I cut the edges. So what I need to do now is just shape them in their final shaping and just let them dry naturally. For future mini tutorials, tips and advice from my textile studio at Clasheen in rural Ireland, please hit the subscribe button, and if you've enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like. I hope you now have some beautiful bangles of your own. I know I certainly enjoy wearing mine. These are the two that I made during the video, and I'm going to get loads of wear from them in the future. So until next time, over and out from Clasheen.